Don't remember how it got to this point.
Yeah, how did we get here? Exactly.
That's me.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure where Clark and Daniel are. We saw them earlier today, so I'm not sure. But we're going to go ahead. Excuse me, John. We're going to go ahead and begin the class.
So it's the Clark and Daniel we met earlier?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't meet
they're in this
Daniel.
class too.
Who was Daniel?
Daniel is.
Oh yeah, Daniel. Yeah,
Presentation.
I thought that he was actually graduate school. He's undergraduate also.
He's undergraduate also, yeah, sure is. All right. Whew. You know, we've been running so wide open all day, it's kind of like, wow. So, well, let me lead us in prayer and we'll jump in and get going. Father, thank you so much for the privilege of being a part of a discussion such as this for graduating seniors, for those who are thinking about how to continually be effective in ministry and in life. And I pray our conversation today would be very helpful to them as they think about next steps, what the future holds. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Okay. You've already had a chance to meet Chip or Dr. Dodd, but I would like to maybe give you just a little bit of information about him. We've been friends for about 24 years, so we go way back into the church that I was pastoring in Murfreesboro. And then when I planted a church, when I say I, really it was a whole group of us who we jumped in together and planted the church. Chip and his wife Sonia and their kids were a part of that church plant. So we have a long history and a long friendship, and for that I'm deeply grateful. I invited Dr. Dodd over to come and speak to my class this morning, the Christian ethics class, in part because we're talking about life issues in Christian ethics. And Dr. Dodd has, like myself, a strong feeling about life and pro-life and supporting those institutions like Pregnancy Support Center, et cetera. You were on the board, I think.
Yes, it was for years.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have the same convictions. And in doing so, I thought I would like to include him in our conversation here. So very quickly, if you don't mind, just give a quick history of yourself. You were from Murfreesboro, but a little bit of your story.
PhD in counseling, master's degree in English, literature. So I ran a company called Center for Professional Excellence, which was addiction recovery. Mainly worked with pastors and physicians, people like y'all, us, who were addicted, and developed a way to treat addiction that no one else in the country was doing at the time. And then it developed a thing called the spiritual root system and used that, which is a biblically based form of a way to articulate how humans are made, what they're made to do, and how and whose we're made to be, living in relationship. It turns out that over the years, neuroscience research ended up reliably proving everything I had been positing for years and using. By the way, there was a physician we treated. He said, I knew what you were talking about is true because I felt true. I knew it was true. Like it rang inside me, but I had to go find out and get it to prove it. He said he's done nothing but study neurosearch for the last 15 years. He says down the line it all was validated, 100%. So neuroscience has caught up with what the Bible's been saying for thousands of years.
And that shouldn't surprise
us. As
us.
a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
Yeah.
So
wow.
So, and I'm married, have two sons, grown, gone, and one getting married, and Sonia and Jan.
Jan is my wife.
Our spouses are really, really good friends. So it's a great opportunity for me to come over, and Jan and Sonia to see each other again. They missed each other. So, and now I'm old and want to just help and sort of freelancing, I guess, really. So Mark invited me, and I'm like, you want to come? I'm like, yes.
Sure.
Absolutely. So I'm getting to do some really cool things now. Including one of the things is working with, I really love this because working with the urban church, doing really reconciliation work with the urban church, whatever that actually is, but it's kind of cool. So anyway, that's it for now.
Well, maybe we'll come back to that because that would be a good segue into some ministry kinds of things for sure. I know because obviously we've known each other a long time, and I'm familiar with the work that you do with CPE and Sage Hill. But in particular with CPE, a part of what you've done all these years is work with professionals such as doctors, lawyers, etc.
Mhm.
And let's include in that list, come on in,
Hey,
let's include in that list pastors,
absolutely.
because there are persons in ministry who have needed the kind of support that you've provided. So
Mhm.
a number of questions maybe I could ask about that. The first would be, what's the number one thing that you see pastors struggling with?
That's a great question. There are, let's see if I can remember them, but there are really 5 characteristics that I see pastors struggling with.
Okay.
One is that their work begins to be associated with their worth,
Yes.
okay? And then,
We've talked about that.
yeah, that I'm only as good as how many people are drawn
Yeah.
to my words.
Right.
And then the next thing is that performance begins to matter more than personal presence.
Yeah.
So those 2 things often lead the pastor or the ministerial person to have to hide their needs, hide their struggles from the people that could tolerate hearing them. It's not, and I don't believe that a pastor needs to be expressing their struggles and insecurities to the public at large, but they need to be expressing them to someone. A third thing that happens is that people, once performance and worth is wrapped up in leadership, then people begin to be things that have to be manipulated. People become problems. It's like if the next person who comes to me, I have to act a certain way, do a certain way, or else they're going to do a certain thing.
Mm.
Then the fourth thing that happens is that because a pastor is created like every other human being, though called, they are not getting their replenishment. Their well runs dry on an emotional and even spiritual level. They lose connection to come in. They lose connection to what they were originally called to do because they're not being restored. And we have to remember that Jesus, in 3 years of ministry we know about, Jesus spent a great deal of time, I kid around, Jesus spent a great deal of time wasting time, doing relationship with God, going away and praying, not taking the bait when it came to he could have 5,000 or 5. He walked away as soon as they wanted to make him king. He took off.
Yeah.
It's 6 miles from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. And when we happened to bring up to Israel, and I ran from Jerusalem to Bethlehem one morning about 5 a.m. You would love that, Clark. You'd get there a long time before I did. And you'd be waiting on me with some water probably. And it took as long as it took, but if you were walking from Jerusalem to Bethlehem and Jesus, they walked everywhere.
Mm.
They spent time hanging out.
Mm.
I mean, a lot of olive trees, a lot of winding back and forth from Jerusalem to Bethlehem, a lot of chatting, a lot of talking. So, and which means that Jesus himself spent a lot of time replenishing. And he also shared with his closest. I mean, he shared intimately. They even saw him in Gethsemane. I mean, he was on the ground. Agonista, I think, is the Greek word. In agony.
Sounds right, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, begging, scared, sad, hurting. So when people become problems, then what happens next is that the pastor, to get his or her needs met, has to develop alternative relationships. Secrets begin to be kept.
Mm.
Fantasies, planning retirement, a little too close to some person they don't need to be close to, maybe getting out of town to drink a little bit. A lot of times the sexual issues come up. I mean, all kinds of difficulties. Depression is an often result of being disconnected relationally. Anxiety, dreading going to the pulpit, and then there's having to hide and hide and hide. And we become as sick as the secrets we keep. So now you've got 4 categories where this pastor is being squeezed into a compartment. And compartmentalization, they're isolated. They are alone. Because a doctor and his wife can get in an argument, and she can be drunk and ram his car in the parking garage, and on Monday morning he can be in the OR doing surgery. A pastor's wife rams his car on Saturday night. He's not in the pulpit Sunday.
Probably not.
Yeah. If it's
not for long.
if it's a viable church, if they care about him.
Okay.
But I'm saying there's so little room because of also the public expectations of pastors, the category of pastors put in. If he isn't courageous and wise and able to find a group of people to process growing up with, because a pastor doesn't come out of the school ready with all great, like, oh, I know everything. And we know it takes a lifetime to learn how to live, so how's a pastor going to learn how to live if he's not doing that, with bringing his heart out with other people and God? So those are the 5 characteristics that end up harming the pastor. Work is your worth, the performance over presence, people become objects instead of, humans that he doesn't have to be the answer to, secrecy, and then isolation. And once the pastor's isolated, trouble. And it's usually, the trouble's mostly at home. A depressed wife, children just struggling to have to perform. That's the PK syndrome.
Right.
So that's that, and that tends to hold true for most leadership, but it's the worst with people who are expected to be perfect.
I've heard you say several times that there's a lot of similarity between high-profile leaders and pastors,
Yeah.
doctors and pastors, because of those character traits.
Do you know what's funny? In psychological testing, people who become pastors and physicians are very closely matched on their psychological makeup. And what's funny about that is that pastors and physicians both spike in the testing. There are spikes that are indicators of certain personality characteristics. Pastors and physicians have a strong tendency to spike on psychopathic deviance and mania. Now, what that means, before you go, like, who can trust them? What that means is that they have great expectations, and they are assigned a job, and they believe they've got to do whatever they got to do to get it done. So, yeah. So a lot of times, if they're not really surrendered in terms of like their own needs, then in their isolation, they become dangerous to themselves. And you've seen some pastors of late, even the evangelical world, blow themselves up. Mm-hmm. Out on the West Coast, y'all know one who became a rage freak. I mean, just cursing from the pulpit because that was the next coolest thing. You'll see pastors, all of a sudden, it's like, I no longer believe in judgment of Jesus. Just like, what? Mm-hmm. So pastors who are not supporting and remaining human wind up losing their passion. But they tend to be very similar. Doctors and pastors are very demanding of themselves. So if they don't have a place to find rest, that demand becomes harm, self-harm. And what I've noticed over the years, especially with doctors and pastors mainly, a pastor and a doctor tend to have a call. Mm-hmm. They're called. You know what I'm talking about? It's like they've got this thing impressed upon their hearts. They've heard a voice that says, come this way, and that person's saying, here I am. So that's a call. And then they're inspired, which means that the breath of that call has been put into them. Okay. And then that equals being compelled. And compelled means they just won't shut up. It's like, I can't shut up. I mean, you know what I mean? It's not. This is what I think about. This is what I do. This is where I go. I can't do anything differently. It always reminds me of Paul. Paul was like, hey, y'all kill me. You don't kill me. I don't care. I'm going. I mean, it was just like, because I can't help it.
Yeah.
because he was called and he was inspired. But if that call becomes separated from who was called, neediness, if it becomes separated from the original recognition that I need God, not just that others need God. Because one thing that Paul never left behind, he never left behind calling himself, I was chief of sinners. And he wasn't just saying that as a selling, he wasn't marketing. I don't believe he called himself chief of sinners because he was a marketer. Like, hey, if I tell people this, they're going to think that I'm, like they can have what I have. What he was saying was the same thing as John Newton, who wrote Amazing Grace. He said, I never knew grace until I saw the 20,000 faces. I think when Paul said, I'm chief of sinners, Paul never forgot what had been done for him. So his call, his being compelled was always related to inspiration, what God had done in his life, and him not being able to get away from looking for something more than what he had. I want something other. So he never forgot the call that was on him, and it was related to being saved from something. He never forgot that. So leaders, especially pastors and physicians, and there we are back to that same, you must, it is your responsibility. It's an imperative that the leader must have somebody who leads him or her. If you do not do that, you are being irresponsible because if you're being compelled. I mean, if a rocket is designed with no program in it to go someplace, it is a dangerous instrument. So because if you are compelled, then you must be responsible by having other people in your lives to help remind you, whisper in your left and right, this is the way, go in it. There was another thing too, I'll forget right now, but if you are compelled, you must have people in your lives that are calling you back to having to be human. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And being human is embarrassing, especially when a lot of people want you not to be human. They want you to have all the answers at anytime they're ready, when they want them, exactly when they want them. And if you can't answer, you're of no use. Because a lot of people are going to be expecting you to rescue them from their pain instead of introducing them to Emmanuel, who can walk with them through their pain.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let me flip the tables just a little bit, because and this is a question that I've asked in previous classes, many of our students will end up in leadership positions, but quite a few will go in not as the leader into an organization, a ministry organization, or maybe even just serving in a church. But how can we do two things? First of all, how can we best support the pastor who may be dealing with those kinds of things you just talked about? And then secondly, what qualities do you see as necessary in us to be good followers?
That is a great question.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, you always ask great questions. Yeah, and so I bet you know the answer, whatever you think.
You're on the spot. They hear from me enough.
Yeah, but I think that if a leader's a really good leader,
yeah,
then they are looking for people who have what they don't have. And so when a leader's leading, they put out a call. So not only is the leader called, but they put out a call. Billy Graham was a great example. Sonia and I went to the Billy Graham library yesterday. Have y'all been there before?
The one in Charlotte?
Worth the drive. It was. We left the airport, thought, oh, I didn't know that was here, and went. But Billy Graham would not have been able to do what he did without participants with him.
Yeah.
And some of them are buried right there. They
Wow.
really lived together. But a leader who has a call cannot do that by himself or herself. So they put out a call, all right? And what the leader's saying is, I'm going this way. Who sees themselves or who hears themselves as called in the same direction? Got that? So if you hear yourself called where the leader's going, then you automatically are a follower. You're a participant in what they're doing. Okay? You don't have the vision, they have the vision, and you want to help the vision come true. And you need to follow someone who is a leader who is following something. Okay? If the leader's not following something, that something's going to be a person called God. Okay? So the leader is not the man. The leader knows the man. The leader is not the head of everything. The leader is the heart following the head, Jesus. Okay? And that holds true also in other missions that have nothing to do with God directly. So stay with this. So when you answer the call, what you're saying is, I want to give my gifts to you to direct towards this thing that I hunger to go to too. But either way, you're going. Now, the leader also knows if you're not going this way, and if you can't give your gifts to this thing, then you need to leave. So there's that the people who follow expect the leader to say, you got to go if you're not in this. So the leader puts out the call, and then the person who follows is saying, I want to do what you asked me to do. So because you are giving yourself to the vision. But the leader needs to be able to submit himself or herself to your authority. For example, just pretend for a good leader says, okay, I want to produce a restaurant. And I want people to be able to come in and eat for free. And I want to serve these people, and we've got to make sure that we have enough here to get them served. Because my call, my hunger, my complaint is to feed the people, and then once they're fed, they have the blanket and the soup, then we can show them love. But first we're going to do actions of love to introduce them to a house of love. Let's say that's the vision. So then he says, okay, who's got a pot? Okay, you got a pot. Okay, who's got some firewood? Okay, you got some firewood. You got some peas, and you got some meat, and you got a match, and you got some water, and I've got some potatoes, and you've got some carrots, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, we're going to light this thing. We light it. Oh, gee, we need to find somebody who does wooden spoons and bowls. We don't have anybody here that does wooden spoons and bowls. Okay, I got to find out somebody does wooden spoons. Do you know anybody? Because you don't do wooden spoons and bowls, yeah. But you can. You really can't. Okay, well, we got to find that guy. I'm not the guy. Let's say it's my vision. I'm not the guy. So, but what do we have if all of you are functioning your appropriate authority so we can help this vision that you feel called to do? What do we have?
A restaurant. We
have a restaurant. We have a stew. We have food. So all of us together have produced this massive, huge stew that we could not do. We are together greater than we are apart. But the stew only has the purpose of going where it's made to go by you following the leader. Mm-hmm. So a leader who's wise says, you have this authority, do it, do your thing. And I'm not asking you to do something other than your thing, do your thing. And so the leader's never looking for somebody who can be him or her. They're looking for somebody who isn't him or her, and they're not threatened by it. Right? And so a leader never needs somebody to come do them. Except later, after the thing's established, the leader must begin to look at how this thing continues. And that's when they're looking for somebody. That's where a lot of organizations run into problems. Because there's leaders looking for somebody to come in who has vision, who does more than has a pot, has water, has peas, has potatoes. Mm-hmm. And that's when a lot of organizations run into trouble. Like, hey, wait a minute. Like, I've been making peas here for all these years, and you bring this cat in? Yes, I brought this guy in to see if because he's called to the vision. Now, one of you guys may rise up to be called to that vision and be trusted by others, but it won't be for ego, it'll be because you are compelled. And that's how an organization remains pure. Call, inspiration, compelled. Are you called to this? When you're no longer called to this, I want you to let me know, because I know that you're called to something else if you're no longer called to this. So that's where the leader's checking in with where the people are, how they are, open door to what we would think of as struggle, criticism, confrontation. But it's always understood that it's the vision we follow. And if you don't want to do it anymore, and that's how I ran the Addictions Treatment Center. If you're not going to do it this way, then here's your check, here are your keys, bye. Because you're in my house.
Right.
This is my call. It's my responsibility. And if I short it, I'm harming everybody who follows me. I'm shorting you who came to eat. I'm not doing it. And so we had to trust God, because I remember I always said, God started the place. God lets the place stay. God will close it when it's time. And that's exactly what he did. It took 23 years. God started it. God ran it. And then God closed it. And there were 2 different times during all that time that we went officially, almost officially out of business. I mean, like, I don't have any money to pay people, but what money I had, I did pay people. Because I said, we came here together, we leave together. It's leadership. And then at the same time, because I was compelled, being out of business didn't stop me. Because I didn't have the call to stop. It's wild. So that's that process that you know, and I was checking with other people, talking and so on. So we went out of business 2 times, many times tempted to give up the integrity for being smart. But the integrity was the business. So I was stupid and thrived versus being smart and surviving. So when you're compelled, you will often look not very smart. So especially leaders who are pastors, I do not believe you can be relevant. You must not be relevant. You must be eternally focused. You know, you don't have to find out what the crowd will appeal to the crowd. Your job is to pay attention to your call, listen to the inspiration, and follow being compelled. And then we went out of business in 2017.
And you're doing okay.
I'm doing okay. Doing okay. The institutionalization of treatment got greater than, became bigger than the people who would refer to trusting the small process. And so the industry moved because it became an industry. It moved towards what's it called? Cookie cutter.
Mm-hmm.
Just cookie cutterization. Easier, softer ways, and I was out. God closed it. Isn't that wild? And at the same time, I ended up seeing that I would feel called towards advancing wellness. Having opportunities to come to talk and share and be with friends. And plus I'm an old man too, so if I'm 42, I'll probably do something different, but now I'm old, so, and I want to give away and make money, of course, but share my experience, strength, and hope with others who are coming this way, who are called, because I know how to help people who have a call. So that's what I think about all the time anyway. So I may as well I literally, that's funny, compelled. Really, you need to be doing what you're thinking about all day long,
Sometimes in ministry, I'm kind of segueing based on just a little something that you said earlier. Sometimes in ministry, when you have people who are on your team, there is an incompatibility.
Yeah.
How do you gracefully allow them or assist them in exiting your organization? Because there'll be times when you're working with people that are difficult to work with. Sometimes you'll have the authority to help them move on. Sometimes you won't. So what would you say to that?
Yeah, if you have the authority to help them move on, you have a much easier position. And something I've always been weak in that I would hope you would not be is, and Sonia, I'm married to Sonia, she always told me, you need to do this, you need to do this. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And I wouldn't pay attention. But job evaluations. Anybody that's part of your following, especially in the pastoral church world, we tend to have a drift towards, it's all about God, so we don't need to do good due diligence around job evaluations and standards and, have an employee handbook and stuff like that. It's like, no. So job evaluations are very important. And also sitting down with people and being truthful with them about what you see their strengths are, and then also where they can grow, spending time doing that. And then if you've done those two things, then whenever things go sideways, then you call them in and you do a thing called confrontation. And that is a skill in which you share your thoughts and feelings with what you're seeing this person do. You don't assess why they're doing it. You don't assess what's wrong with them. You don't assess what you think they're thinking. You tell them what you're seeing them do and what you're hearing them say. And then you look into the job evaluation and you're not meeting these standards. So I'm going to give you this amount of time, and I need to see improvement. And I'd like for you to tell me what it's like for you to hear me say these things. Are they scary? Are you angry? And if you develop a resentment, you need to come process with me. Come tell me. Okay, so you're inviting at the same time you're giving boundaries and responsibilities. Okay, so it's invitational. And if they don't take the invitation, then they're slowly going to be moving out the door, because you've got somebody who is very likely poisonous. Okay. Now, if it's somebody who's like almost like a peer or you're a follower, then you will have to prayerfully have the skill, develop the skills, and then pray about when to speak. Because wisdom is the shortest definition of wisdom you'll ever hear, I believe, is wisdom is about timing. Wisdom means knowing when to speak, when to wait, when to be silent, when it's time to move, when it's time to stay, when it's time to rest, when it's time. And the only way you can do wisdom is by being highly sensitive to listening to the call of God within you. And where does the call of God live? In you. Question. It's not rhetorical, Farley. Y'all remember that? Good. I used an old-timey reference. People do. That it's not rhetorical, Farley. Where does the call of God live in you? And I'm being very serious.
Your mind, your heart, where? Emotions, feelings, where does it reside? What would you say?
Where does God live in you?
Emotions.
It lives in your heart.
I say the heart.
Yeah.
That's what's going to be driving everything else.
Yeah, man looks at appearances, but God looks at the heart. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is the man. Jesus in Matthew 23, guys, it's the heart that matters. You keep on painting the outside, dressing up the inside. It's like, how I've longed to be close to you, to know you, so on. So that you have to develop, I believe, being sensitive to, being able to speak out of the place God lives in. So you've got to be listening to what God's saying to you. And the scriptures are pretty clear. Paul says, the Spirit testifies with my spirit.
Right.
So there's this conversation going on. And you got to listen to the Spirit and listen to yourself. And have a conversation. And be sensitive to what God is saying and when you need to say it or not. And then when you say it, you need to speak out of the heart instead of out of good reason. You need to talk about, like Nehemiah. Nehemiah walks in, and King Xerxes?
Mm-hmm.
Nehemiah? Xerxes?
I think it's Xerxes.
Yeah. I look at y'all like, well, y'all know everything. What is it? It's one of
I had
them.
to think about it.
One of those great kings. A good king. He was a decent king, decent pagan king. And Nehemiah walks in, and Nehemiah had been praying, struggling, dealing with his heart. He was homesick. His people, he wanted to go home and build the wall. I'm in bondage. And he was a wine tester. He drank the wine, see if the king.
Cupbearer.
Yeah, wine cupbearer. He would, you can drink it. I'm not dead. You can have the wine. And he walked in, and the king said to him, and I think it's amazing, the king didn't even have to see it. And the king said, Nehemiah, why is your face downcast? This can only be sadness. And Nehemiah prayed, and Nehemiah was afraid. And Nehemiah said, "O king, dare I speak? But what you see and what you said about me is so. I'm sad, and I need you. Would you?" And then he dared to confront the king. He confronted the leader with his struggle. Not with an accusation, but with an invitation. Okay? So you and I need followers, and also followers need to be able to speak to each other invitations, not accusations. And so to make confession about where I am with what you're doing. So Nehemiah was able to say, Esther did the same thing, but Nehemiah was able to say, look, I'm afraid to say this. I don't know what's going to happen, but I need to confront you, king. Would you be willing to let me go home? Me tasting your wine, anybody can do. Me going back to my people and building a wall, I hunger for. Will you let me do it? The king said, here's a letter, go. And then Nehemiah went in, compelled, then went and faced some real fun guys, his brothers and sisters, right? And they were like, we'll kill you. Like, So the pagan king was better to him than his own people. But so if you're in a position working with peers, you've got to be able to offer them invitations. And then unless you're confronting the leader, then if this person you're doing invitations with, it's like remains a thorn, then you go to you do what you're trained not to do. You go do what God says do. You snitch. You get what I'm saying? You go snitch. World's terms for it. You go ask the leader for help. Because let me tell you something, that leader wants to know. Even though they don't want to hassle, the leader wants to know if there are problems in the village. They want to know, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, gosh, can't you guys just get along? I'm not your daddy. But, oh, shoot, yeah, I'm in leadership, so we got to deal with this problem. And the leader will call the people in or whatever. Go from there. Does that make sense?
Yes. We've got about 8 or 9 minutes. Do y'all have some questions? Let's just kind of do a freewheeling here for a few moments. What questions would you like to ask? We've got a great resource here. Maybe there's something you have wondered about or would like to pursue, something that he said perhaps.
Like, are y'all having as much fun as I am? I just love that. I said it's not rhetorical, Farley, and y'all laughed.
Glad I could help.
Do
I said glad I could help.
Yeah, exactly.
So what questions do you have? I do have another one, but I would like for y'all to have a question. Okay, so here's my question. Kind of let y'all off the hook there just a little bit. You're a dad, got 2 kids. I'm
Yeah.
a dad, got 2 kids. Our kids are gone. They're out of the house.
Yeah.
and-
I've got a question, too. I've got a question,
Okay.
too, after we do this one.
Okay,
If
all
we have
right.
time.
So now that your children are grown and kind of out there in the world doing their thing, what advice did you give them, or what advice would you like to give them about what it means to now be in this adult world?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
Again.
Again.
Okay, so what's the answer?
Only after you. That's right. I'm asking you a question.
Shoot. I always think in terms of, in terms of what I wished I had done differently. A lot of times I think in that direction. But You know, the thing I would want to sit down and talk to them about is just, hey, it's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard. I mean, you're doing things now that in my daddiness, I would really wish to rescue you from. But you got to go do them.
You do.
And I don't like it because you're living in the world and there's no cure for that.
Yeah.
You know? So, and yet I'm here. I want to be with you. I want to help. And I know you got to go do it. And they want to go do it.
Sure.
They do want to go do it. But I also want to be a sounding board for when it's hard and scary.
Yeah.
You know, because we've been there.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be used.
That's very similar to what I would say is I would want very much for them to feel as though when they encounter those difficulties,
Mhm.
and they're going to, and you will encounter those difficulties, that you have a resource in your parents, or you have a resource in your
Mhm.
pastor, or you have a resource in your professor. You know, you're not totally alone. You have to kind of fight that battle.
Hmm.
You know, there are battles you're just going to have to fight.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, do you agree with that?
100%. That's
Yeah.
why if you're not compelled, you will end up quitting.
Yeah, exactly.
Have to. Because the ministries of any kind is far too hard. Just go into business and you hide out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Christina, is that you?
Yeah.
Not Christine, but Christina?
Christina.
Christina, yeah. Say, this is just an example. This is my question to you, and it's a question for all of you. You scared? Kind of like, oh, gee. Or I could ask Clark, or I could ask Daniel, you know, I could ask Rhonda. When you think about, and this is right off of the heels of what Mark's asking, you're going to Thailand, you're going back to Thailand in June or July. True?
May. Bridget.
May?
May.
Okay, May. Okay. And you don't know what you're going to do.
It's like mission trips. So we are going to go to village and spend time with them and share the gospel with them.
Okay, so you already have a job,
No, it's not exactly job,
but it's a hope.
yes.
Okay. Are you scared?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
Now,
good. That's okay.
Thank you for your courage. That's a courageous answer, isn't it? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it?
Mhm.
Now, what makes it courageous?
The unknown.
admission that I don't really have total control of what might happen.
Yes. Yes. And what did you say?
The unknown.
Yeah, so you can relate to Christina because you happen to be headed to the same place.
Mhm.
Or you don't know either what's going to happen,
Yeah.
right? So that's just remarkable. So you're already good leaders because you know you're afraid, you know you're not in control, and so it's what Mark said. So you better be good at talking to daddy or mama or a pastor or a friend, because if you don't, you're going to be pretending. And if you're pretending, you're using up energy to hide while you're also trying to be real. And it will sap you. And that's what I mean, those 5 characteristics of relationship impairment or in leadership impairment. If you're not good at being afraid, you're not going to be good at leading. If you're not good at being able to grieve, sadness about you wanted to be here but you're still here, you're not going to be good at leading. Jesus was expert. And it sounds so weird, but Jesus was an expert at being sad. Expert at being even afraid. I know it sounds weird, doesn't it? I don't mean he's scared like us. He's scared like him. But Jesus was an expert at being able to walk in loneliness. He was gutsy. Jesus was an expert at risk-taking, passionate, a willingness to be in pain for something that mattered more than pain. But he asked his father, I don't want to do this. Was there any way around this? Because he was child, man, God. I mean, Daddy, do we have to do this? And Daddy said, we got to do this. He's like, okay, because you say. So please do not be bigger than Jesus. Please stay in need of Jesus. And Jesus has given you people in your lives to speak into your lives. So if you get bigger than Jesus, you're not going to need people. You're not going to be good at being a child, adopted child, or follower. And the moment you don't have the language of your heart, and the moment you lose heart, you will lose intimacy with Jesus, though there'll be plenty of contact. Same mission, but without the relationship. Does that make some sense? So what Mark and I are saying about our children, like, yeah, it's going to be hard, but we're here. I know it's going to be difficult, but I'm here. I know what sadness is. I've been in it. But I've already walked this path. Yeah, I ran the business. I ran it with integrity and faith. God opened it. God ran it. God will close it. You're going to be okay. Come to me. Come to me, all of you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest, because I get what y'all are like. So as you go into this, be afraid and ask for help. Be sad and have a shoulder. Be lonely and have a companion. Be hurt and have a healer. Be angry, like willing to be in pain for something because it matters so much. You're willing to do it. And have somebody to celebrate victories with. Because a friend will have your sorrows and double your joy. If you have a friend, you have someone to share your pain with and also celebrate with.
One last comment I'll make, and then I know we got to go. I think uncertainty is more the norm than not.
Amen. And anxiety is normal.
How about that?
Yeah.
How about that? Thanks, guys. Appreciate y'all being here.
Yeah,
We'll close it down for today. See you next Wednesday, same time, same place.
And get the book, The Voice of the Heart, or the audio book. Not for me, for you. That's the book I wrote.
Yeah, it's really good.
Among others. I like The Perfect Loss, mostly. The best thing I've ever done, you don't want to read, but nobody else has either. So I won't even.
Your novel? Scott's read it.
Oh,
Yes,
he did. That's
Yeah, he
awesome.
did. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you, guys. Good to meet you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Clark and Daniel, good to see y'all. I got to see y'all twice. That's great.
Yeah, that's right.
Have a good rest of the day.
Yeah.
Bye, Christina. Hope it goes well in Thailand. Rhonda, hope you have a good time over there where you're moving.
Okay, thank you.